Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today we're going to be taking a look at a very exciting addition to the fly-by-wire A32NX. It's something I've been talking about a lot on my channel before, incredible excitement for it to arrive, so I've been talking it up and I'm really pleased to say that it's been added now to the fly-by-wire A32NX. I'm using the experimental version, which is my current favourite version of the A32NX, and it is certainly in here and it's in the dev version. I'm not sure if it's featured in the stable version at the moment. It is the addition of the progress page bearing and distance to feature. We're going to talk about why that's important and what we use it for. As an airline pilot on the A320, I use this feature every single time I fly, at least once if not several times during the flight to help with my situational awareness. It's an incredibly invaluable tool and it's such an easy way to immediately get a better picture of where you are, especially when it comes to your descents and planning your descents and your energy management of the aircraft. We've just taken off from Basel. We're heading down to Venice on this very short hop in the A32NX. So let's jump into the flight deck and take a look at what all the excitement is about. So here we are on the flight deck then in the cruise, and let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about in the MCDU, I'll just brighten it up for you. If we have all of our normal pages, of course, and if we go to the progress page, there's this little line here that says bearing, distance, and then to. So the bearing is your relative course away or to that point. So if I want to put in, for example, let's put in something ridiculous. Let's put in the London VOR. I type in LON, enter it there, and then it gives us a choice of different VORs. So I know that the London VOR is 113.6. It's that one, and that's the correct latitude longitude. It's about 400 miles away because we're obviously near the Alps. So I can select it, and now look at that. It shows me the bearing and distance away. So if I flew a track of 308 degrees now, that would take me up towards the London VOR. So that would take me straight back home. So you can type in VORs or waypoints. It's incredibly flexible, this. So we could put in the Manchester VOR, for example, and then it will give us the same information, bearing and distance. So we choose the correct one. Be careful you do that. And there you go, 314, a bit further away, 550 miles away. So why is this so useful to us as flight crew on the Airbus? Well, we are now flying down to Venice, and let me bring up the charts for you. So here is the chart of what we're expecting to fly, the Albert arrival into Venice Airport, Lima India Papa Zulu. We're going to come in from Albert, and then this is a modern sort of RNAV star, and I have a video on star charts if you'd like to see that, where I talk about this typical approach path. This is used because at any point along this path, air traffic control could take us, instead of having to fly all the way out here and then back round and in to the Laren waypoint, they might say to us, right, go from Papa Zulu 760 here, and then you might say, go direct from there to Laren, something like that, and then you can just cut the entire thing off. However, if there's lots of traffic around, then you might fly this arrival whilst the other traffic in front of you gets a bit of distance between you. So air traffic control can use this for spacing. So you have to expect to fly it all or have the fuel to fly it all, but then you also need to be ready that they won't make you fly it and you'll have to turn straight in towards the runway, because it ends at this Laren waypoint. If I go to the ILS chart, you'll see Laren is then out here, and that's where we would start our approach into the final approach for the runway using the ILS in this case. So it is quite, as you can tell, quite hard to work out exactly how many miles we have until we land. If we go back to our flight deck, and you can see the Alps over there. Oh, my thrust levers are complaining. There we go. If we jump into flight plan and I go to plan, you'll be able to see that arrival. Let's zoom in and then let's scroll through. And as we scroll through, you can see it all there, and there it is, all the way out, all the way back in again. So yeah, pretty hopeless, and we're not expecting to fly all of that. So we've talked in the past about top of descent, and there is this little calculator in here now. So we're currently at 33,000 feet. If we need to get to the ground at 0, we need 104 nautical miles. The problem is, if I go into my MCDU, it says 230 miles to go. So that would lead me to think that I have 230 miles of distance, so I need to descend in about 100 miles. But now, let's look at what this feature offers us. We go to the progress page, and now I can type in the airport, Lima India Papa Zulu, which is Venice's ICAO code. You have to use the 4-letter ICAO code. It won't work otherwise. Type it in, and there we go. Because there's only one of these in the world, it doesn't ask me for different options. And now we have distance, 172 miles, and the bearing 122. So you can see we are significantly closer. The flight plan suggests 230, but we're actually only 171 in a straight line. Remember, this is a straight line drawn from our aeroplane to the airport. If we bring up the VFR charts, we can make that clearer. So that is a line from here to here. So it is incredibly useful because it gives me a reference for when I really want to descend. In my mind, any cruising flight level above sort of 30,000 feet, I want to descend about 100 to 120 miles. Now you need to adjust that, you need to account for wind and so on, but if I'm getting within 120 miles of the airport and I'm still up at my cruising flight level and I'm not expecting to descend anytime soon, I know that there's a chance that I'm going to be left high, because it probably means the flight plan is trying to fly me around this massive long route and thinks I have a lot more distance than I do. So that is why this feature is useful. It does get even better. I can type in Lima, India, Papa, Zulu, and then we're going to land on runway 04 right. So if you type in the runway you're landing on, there we go, it will count you down exactly to the threshold of that runway, which is even more precise. The magic of doing that is that now we get a bearing to the threshold, but also an exact distance. So if the DME isn't working, we have this option to help keep our situational awareness high on final approach. So I can look down here and I can tell that I'm 6 miles from the runway, even if the DME isn't working. So the DME, for those of you who haven't seen it before, it's an ILS DME. The DME is what reads out our distance. It will show us our distance on the PFD, but that is not always working. And some approaches don't require it. The DME is not always required to fly an approach. This one you can see here, it says DME is actually required, so we would need it working. But some airports it's not required, but if it isn't there, we can use that feature in the progress page to help keep our situational awareness high. So when is that also useful? Well, RNAV approaches. An RNAV approach does not have a DME associated with it. They never do. So if we were to go back to our charts for Venice and I pull up an RMP for 04 left, you'll see here there's no DME. So we need to know our distance to the runway, because the distances for our altitude are based on distance to runway 04 left. So I would need to type in 04 left into my progress page, and then it will count down these distances, and that's how I can judge my distance to go as well as the altitude I need to be at. Now that's not the only source. If you fly an RNAV approach, when the 2 waypoint is the runway, you'll also get your distance up here on the navigation display. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways to get this information. But the easiest one, and the one that I refer to all the time, is the progress page. So at some point in the cruise, I'll put in the airport and the expected runway I'm going to land on, and have it set up like this, just to help me be aware that, okay, I'm probably going to want to descend in about 30 miles from now, even though if I go to my flight plan, it would suggest I don't need to descend for sort of 70 miles. So quite a big difference, and something to be very aware of. You can use it to put in waypoints. So a lot of pilots, let me bring up the charts in a slightly better way for you guys. Oh no, that will do, there we go. Yeah, so a lot of pilots like to, let me make it a little bit smaller. They don't just use it as I've shown you now, they will also use it for certain waypoints. So what you could do is, let's say we're flying the Albert arrival, a pilot might say, I want to be at Laren at 5,000 feet. That's the altitude I want to be at the waypoint Laren. So then they'll go to the MCDU and type in Laren into the progress page. There it is, it's 146 miles away. And now they'll calculate their descent based on that waypoint. So they'll use this distance, counting down to 0, to be at Laren. So it's incredibly useful for that. So there you have it, the Progress Bearing Distance 2 feature added to the A32NX. Absolutely brilliant. Some words of warning for it. If you predict that you're landing on one runway, so for example, I think I'm landing on Venice's 04 right, and I put that in, you must remember to change it. If they then later change your runway to 04 left and you forget, you could be slightly different in the distance. Now it won't seem a lot here, 132.5, 132.2, 132.0, so it's 0.2 miles difference. They're basically next to each other. But if you're at some airports, for example Amsterdam or Heathrow, where the runways are a bit further apart, obviously Paris, Charles de Gaulle, then you could find that there's quite a big difference between those numbers. So you need to make sure that you have a good idea of which runway you're landing on when you type it in, because you'll notice if I go LFPG 08 left, Charles de Gaulle, and I'll go to 09 right, and then so it's 322 miles away, 324 miles away, so there's 2 miles difference between those two at this angle. So it's just important that you remember that. Now obviously that's not the top priority, it's just if you're on the approach and you're relying on this for your distance, make sure you've got the correct runway in there. But as I said, its main purpose is going to be just that situational awareness in the descent, being aware of what shortcuts you could get and how close you actually are to the airport. And it's going to work from here all the way down, even as we're down getting towards the Laren waypoint. And these later points on this star, I can at any moment on this approach now, instead of looking around for different distances and adding up distances to waypoints or trying to judge these range rings on the screen, if at any point I'm on the approach and I think, can I make it into the runway from here, I just look down here, there's the runway, there's my distance, and we're ready to go. So here we are now a bit closer into Venice. Venice is off to our left, as you can see, and we are about to start that long-winded arrival. So I've been kept high by air traffic control in this case. So the question is, if they suddenly send me straight into the airport, can I make it? I'm at 13,000 feet. So we use our old traditional easy maths. We do 13 times 3, so that'll be 39 miles, plus a little bit to slow down because, of course, we're still doing 290 knots, so we still need room to slow down. So 39, maybe we need 45 miles. However, we could probably do it in 39 with a bit of speed brake use. So how far have I actually got? Well, it's not very clear. My nav display is pointing the wrong way from the airport. The 2 waypoint is in front of us, so it's 4 miles away, so that's no good at all either. So what's the easiest way? Well, if you have the ILS and that's tuned properly, you may have the DME showing now. You may not. It depends on how far away you are. So these, and that also needs the DME to be working. All I have to do, progress page, there's my Venice 04 right, I'm 23 miles away, so if air traffic told us to go direct to Laren, we'd basically be pointing straight for the runway, or if they turned us in to intercept the ILS. Could I do it now? Probably not. I'd need to use some speed brakes or ask air traffic control to let me have a few more track miles, as we call them, which just means letting us fly downwind a bit more while we descend. So it's a really great tool. It's the quickest way to have that information available to you. Just be careful you do have the correct runway set up when you load it in.
$400. $300. $200. $100. 50. 40, 30, 20, retard, 5.
So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope it's given you a bit of extra information about that great feature. As I said at the start, something that I use every time I fly in the Airbus. It is really useful for assisting in your situational awareness when flying these big commercial jet airliners. There'll be plenty more guides and tutorials coming out all about the Airbus on this channel, as well as plenty of live streams with the Airbus and other airliners as we explore the world of flight simulation. So do please subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. Otherwise, we'll see you again in another video very soon. Do keep safe and well. Bye bye.